Hey, live. How you doing, guys? Now, pigeon, gay. I'm taking shit right now, just so you know. Good to know, pigeon. Good to know. Is it on a car by any chance? Are you flying while you're doing it, as pigeons usually do? You gay. I know you are, Finland. I know you are. Live. How you doing, guys?
Oops.
Now, got some feedback on my end. Gay. I'm taking shit right now. There we are. Fixed. So this is a little series that I do sometimes where I just go through some articles that I've not had a chance to go through. Maybe talk about some events that have happened, although there's not really many major events that have happened really that I need to talk about that I've not already talked about. Hello, JPM. So some stuff on Star Wars that I didn't get to cover. There's some things about Monroe Bergdorf that I should have covered a few weeks ago, but I didn't. And I think there's... Oh yeah, Richard Spencer's college tour is another thing. And what else is there? And Linda Sarsour getting arrested, although I might save that one for next week, although time is pressing because... I might as well do that. Oh, and there's another thing about segregation at Comic-Con, which is another interesting thing. I don't think many people talked about that. Maybe the more geek sphere of YouTube were talking about that. So, say hello to the chat first. Have a little, little chillaxed atmosphere, and then we'll get going. We'll get the show on the road. So, this is going to be an on and off series. It really just depends on how much I've got left to spare. And it won't always be live, it'll be in video format too. But I just thought for now, live would be better because I can't be asked actually putting my recording equipment all together and make an actual video. So it's going to be live. So now I'm going to decide to choose this particular article from BJ Media. And it says here, segregation at Comic-Con. No straight white males allowed at parties. The comics industry seems to be doubling down on their policy of completely excluding anyone who is straight, white, male or conservative. This year's Emerald City Comic Con released its schedule of events on its app recently. Anyone who is male, white and identifies as heterosexual found themselves excluded from industry mixes and professional mixes. So here we are, we can see the app. Industry, women and genderqueer mixes. Already we're getting into the pseudoscience. People who don't actually exist as a gender are getting like their own little thing with people who actually exist. And then, we've got the industry LGBTQIA. Apparently asexuality, I think that's what it stands for, which is people who don't actually have a sexuality, funnily enough. That's why they're called asexual. They don't feel the things that we do. They don't fall in love, or at least they don't have sexual urges and things like that. They're very unusual. I don't see why you would add that to their community, but whatever. I is intersex, and to be honest, I don't understand why that would be a thing. Then why is transgender on there? Because it's literally not even a sexuality. These people can be gay or straight or bi. Like, technically asexuality has more of a thing for that, and queer just means gay or bi or whatever. Industry people of colour mixer. So as you can see, it's all the progressive stack, although for some reason I don't know why they have included LGBT when gay men are now no longer under the protection of feminism, but whatever. So also attending the event, who asked to remain anonymous for safety reasons, spoke to PJM about the blatant discrimination. Yeah, you have to be anonymous, you have to discuss these things in secret, and with these journalists in particular, because these people have a lot of power in the comics industry and they have a lot of power in entertainment. They basically run it. I know what you're thinking, guys. We're not going there. We're not going there, quote unquote. But this is the toxic environment in which these people create, and this is something that needs to change. I don't think that any of this is necessary. None of this is necessary for the industry. This won't increase output of comics. This won't increase an input of people going into work there. It won't do anything. It won't do anything. And excluding another group of people because of what they believe or what they happen to be sexually attracted to or because of the colour of their skin is also not going to increase the things that they expect this is going to increase. This will not increase representation. This will not make it more inclusive. If anything, it's making it more exclusive by excluding people. But this is how they roll. This is how they roll. I'm disappointed that they choose to be divisive in an industry that has seen enough divisiveness as it is, the source said. We are not our race or gender or sexuality. Aren't we a sum of our parts? Or as MLK noted so famously, isn't it the content of our character that should be what counts? Ah, yeah, but you see, MLK is their boy, apparently. He isn't. And apparently that's not really what he said to these people. Really, we should be judging people based on these superficial things because, well, that's how we're going to get to equality, guys. Don't you see? If you had the misfortune to watch the Olympics this year, you'd know what the most important people in the games were two guys who like having sex with the other guys. The fact that they didn't medal in their individual sports because of their subpar performances had no bearing on the media's desire to elevate them to godlike status for everyone to adore and beatify. They're queer, so they win. Is this like an American thing? Were these like two American athletes or Winter Olympics guys who were together? I mean, apparently they were playing really badly. I don't know. I've not even seen it. But that's the thing, isn't it? People were more interested in what they are as to who they are and what they do. And that's a real shame. It's just typical bourgeois shit, just making everything worse. Just reducing it. It's a very reductive thing. It's just horrible. Can't stand it. The source contacted Emerald City Comic Con on Facebook to inquire about the lack of diversity in the mixes. Yeah, but don't you see? Diversity does not include white people. Diversity is all black people, all gay people, all women. That's what diversity is. Remember, guys. The response is laughable. So if I'm white, cis and male, where can I go for an industry mixer? No response? Seriously? Is there an industry mixer for me? Hi there. We do not have a specific industry mixer for your category this year. Ooh. Oh, guys. It seems the left is determined to create an alternate universe where discrimination still exists, but it's only directed at white people. This one's contrary to all the great civil rights leaders who fought for equality. And we all know what they mean by that. I mean, it really is. But this is what happens when the lunatics end up running the asylum. This is what happens when the far left take over a more moderate group, a more moderate movement. This is just what happens. They let their prejudices run the show. Because in their opinions, there's only the oppressor, because remember it's Marxism, there's the oppressor and then there are the oppressed. And white people are automatically the oppressors, and everybody else, women included for some reason, are also the oppressed. And thus, we must oppress the oppressors, even though they're the oppressors who are oppressing them, in order to make everything equal. And yet they keep going on about how they're oppressed, yet they're the ones doing all these things that can be considered oppressive. But shh, let's not get into that, guys. Lately, there have been way too many of these stories surfacing. Pamela Geller's children are being run out of their jobs because of views their mother holds that the left finds unacceptable. Simply being linked by DNA makes her daughters culpable in the left's eyes, and so they must be destroyed and put out of work, unable to support themselves or make a life for themselves, because they are seen to hold double plus ungood views. Their current apology tour will not save them. They are untouchables, because their mother refuses to bow to the politically correct dogma that insists Islam means us no harm, even though its ideological adherents refuse to stop blowing people up or running them over with trucks while screeching Allahu Akbar, or allowing them to do these things, and whenever you criticise it, they get really, really sensitive. And they keep telling you that you're oppressing them by criticising their religion, and that we should make that illegal, thus increasing the spiral of violence. But that's another thing. They have their own kind of race realism / original sin. Just because your parent thinks one way doesn't mean that you think that way. And just because some members of your race think a certain way doesn't mean that you think that way. Nor is because it's something that they may have done years and years ago before you were born have an impact on you. You shouldn't have to be the one to take the fall for what they did long and long ago. But this is revenge politics, people. This is what it is. They're doing this for revenge, pure and simple. As well as to increase representation, because apparently there's an issue there. Worldcon, a science fiction convention, banned conservative author John Del Arroz after they claimed he intends to break their rules sometime in the future, and members of the Science Fiction Writers of America are actively campaigning to keep him from joining the group, based on nothing but personal dislike of his outspoken conservatism. The totalitarian SJW mobs that have taken over institutions are now putting the squeeze onto unwanted members who are straight, white and male. It's much like Kurt Schlichter's recent viral article. They don't hate the NRA, they hate you. And they're not afraid to show it. Well, that's the thing. They are emboldened to hate. They have basically created a society where only their hate is allowed to be expressed. Or at least hatred towards a certain group of people is allowed. But it's no different to what they are claiming to be fighting now as it was 50 years ago. There really isn't any much of a difference. It's the same hate, it's the same tactics, but apparently it's different when they do it because they're fighting oppression. And basically, we all know what they're saying there. But there we go. Segregation in the Comic-Con. Basically, if you're white, straight, or male or conservative, you're not welcome in the industry anymore. They don't want you, even though white males make up the vast majority of it and the ones who came up with all the characters that we all know and love, like Black Panther. But hey, whatever, guys. That's just too much for them to handle. It's best to just put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la, right? So next up, we have a certain sci-fi series that I've loved for many years, although times are indeed testing me. I now realise how people who are a bit older than me felt when the prequels came out. Yeah, I'm talking about Star Wars. So, I now know what they felt like because of the recent film. I didn't mind the first one. Well, at least the 7th one. I didn't mind the first new film, The Force Awakens. I understand the problems, but other than that, I think it's okay. Although it gets worse with repeat viewing, so it's best probably not to watch it ever again because it's just going to get worse for me. I think Razor Fist was spot on about that, but I think that's a J.J. Abrams thing. Funnily enough, he's the subject of that article. Now, he claims that the hatred of The Last Jedi is due to fear of women. I know this is a biased article, but whatever. I just want to see what he has to say about this. I love Star Wars like any geek, these article starts. Worth his salt should. So you can imagine that any additions to Lucas's pre-prequel universe are going to be heavily critiqued by me. After my initial excitement over having seen the latest entry into the Star Wars franchise, I indeed had some criticisms, and they fell in line with what a lot of people thought. Namely, what the hell was the deal with all the shoehorned in girl power? J.J. Abrams, the producer behind the new Star Wars films, has heard this criticism from fans, and after some consideration, decided that the problem wasn't with the film, it was with the audience. Abrams stated that the only reason people are criticising the film at all is because people are just threatened by females. Yeah, I feel threatened by people who are halfway around the world in California making shit films. Okay? Despite the fact that, I don't mind Daisy Ridley as an actress. I don't think she's a terrible actress. Only she's not very good in Star Wars. Like, she's wooden. And in fact, she gets worse in the second one. Like, she's completely wooden in that one. Apart from when she's really struggling with the mind fights she's having with Swolo, and it's just like, we know she's not going to fall to the dark side. It was a really predictable affair, but whatever. We're not asking to take away the male point of view or male artistry or male contribution. We're simply saying what is fair. I can see why people get freaked out by it, but the people who are freaked out are the people who are accustomed to that privilege, and this is not oppression. This is about fairness. Nobody's saying they're oppressed, JJ. Nobody's saying that they're afraid of these women. They're pointing out that the way you're going about writing these characters and forcing these things in is wrong. You shouldn't have to force it. You should just let it grow naturally, write it as it goes along, essentially. Well, plan it out and write it, but these characters must grow in an organic fashion. That's what I'm trying to say. We should grow to like them. They need to have faults. They need to be somewhat grounded in reality so that we can identify with them, essentially. We can feel for them. But we don't feel for Ridley because, not Ridley, whatever her character's called, Rey, because she's too perfect. And she's just almost like an alien, almost. She has similar problems with a lot of the prequel characters. They're either too wooden and not really human enough for us to have any kind of sympathy for them, or they're just too perfect. And she's a case of too perfect. She's a Mary Sue, and Mary Sues are considered a bad character archetype for a reason. And also the other one, the fat Asian chick, she literally serves no purpose in the plot. She really doesn't. And then she goes and ruins what could have been a really good, act by Finn. Personally, I think they could have written that better and not had to have that stupid scene where she crashes into him. Like, seriously, what kind of person would do that in the battle? I don't, whatever. Let's continue. Star Wars is a big galaxy, and you can sort of find almost anything you want to in Star Wars. If you are someone who feels threatened by women and needs to lash out against them, you could probably find an enemy in Star Wars. No, nobody is angry about them being women. It's not how you've written these female characters. They're not like Leia. They're not even like Padme. At least Padme was, well, she wasn't well written, but compared to your films, she actually was well written. At least she wasn't ham-fisted. At least she felt natural within the universe. At least people like that are okay. What about the one from, not Star Wars Rebels, Ahsoka Tano from the new Clone Wars TV show? She's a very natural character that fits in well with the rest of the characters in the universe and does good things and has character development. None of these characters have character development. I mean, I guess you could argue Finn does to some extent, but he's the only character people can actually relate to, and that's probably why he's quite a popular character, because he's the only one. And you relegate him to subplot status. It's embarrassing. You could probably look at the first movie that George did and say that Leia was too outspoken or she was too tough. And anyone who finds a problem with anything can find the problem. The internet seems to be made for that, yes, and that's exactly what you are doing. You are finding the problem with the audience rather than your own art. Like, nobody has ever said that about Leia. I think people like that about Leia because she was outspoken throughout the whole films and didn't take shit and actually pretty much led her own escape. Like, those guys were basically improvising and then she just took control and got everybody out. With a little help from Obi-Wan's distraction, but whatever, guys. Abrams has fallen into one of Hollywood's more common political agenda bubbles and assumed that just because a character falls into an identity category, then the character should automatically be loved, awkwardness of the placement or purpose of the character be damned. Exactly, that's pretty much what it is. And another thing I would add that is not just that, he's deflecting. He's deflecting the criticism onto the gender because he's trying to shame these people. That, oh, you don't like these characters? Well, it must be because you're a sexist, even though most of the people that I've seen, 90% of them, are complaining about the writing and how these people are being developed. But it doesn't really matter. While Leia Organa is a woman, she wasn't beloved strictly because she's a woman. It wasn't because she was a woman. I mean, I guess there's some people who like it like that, but most fans I've talked to don't like it because of that. As he says here, her polite attitude and legitimate position within the plot made her a beloved character. Also, everything she did made sense, be it kissing her unbeknownst to her long-lost brother to make Han jealous, or taking off on the hoverbike to stop a stormtrooper from reporting the rebels' position. People love Leia because she was a great character with a solid purpose, not because she had XX chromosomes. Exactly. And I just remember the Asian character, Rose. Yeah, Rose doesn't serve a purpose in the plot. She's not important. She's just there to do menial tasks and to fuck things up and to be annoying. Leia actually does things, and she's well written. Meanwhile, some of the Last Jedi's women felt forced and unnecessary. Admiral Holdo being chief among them. Well, I know, I kind of disagree a little bit. She wasn't, I guess she was forced in the sense of how she looks and stuff, but to be fair, she did serve some kind of purpose, and she was next down the line when it came to the leadership roles, and she did do a pretty good sacrifice, even though, yeah, Akbar was lazily killed off so she could be injected into the plot, I guess, but she did serve a purpose. So, you know, it's kind of a mixed bag. I know a lot of people disagree with that, and I understand. And she does make moves that make no sense, obviously, like hiding the battle plans and stuff like that, and the mutiny. That's so stupid. I think from this point on, he just goes on about his opinion. Well, I'm just going to talk about my opinion. You can deflect all you want, but the fact remains is it's a badly written mess, and now JJ has to essentially fix some of the it's not necessarily plot holes, but plot mistakes that they made, because the guy who was going to do number 9 had a really good idea. He was going to actually keep Luke alive and he would survive the whole series and just walk off into the sunset. There were things that they had in Force Awakens that they just completely ignored, Like, they were implying so much things. Like, maybe, just maybe Finn has some kind of Force potential, because a lot of people on Star Wars YouTube were talking about that. And just, you know, maybe Rey is related to Solo, or maybe related to Luke, but then apparently the reveal was that, oh, spoilers, guys, that her parents were nobodies. I didn't even know that was a reveal, to be honest. I thought it was Ben Solo just playing mind games with her. But anyway, speaking of Daisy Ripley, she believes that characters shouldn't have to have flaws, because Mary Sue's, it's okay when they do it, right? Let me just check that I have I have the desktop audio on, so let's play this. This is really stupid.
Besides her longing for her family and parents, what would you say is another weakness for Rey?
I do not think that is a weakness. Great question, but I don't think it's a weakness.
It isn't a weakness, actually. It's just a longing. She has no weaknesses. At least she's aware of such things. I know that's a really bad angle from the camera and the pause face, but I'd do it.
So, yeah.
Do you think she has any just kind of inherent weaknesses, or...
I mean, I don't really believe in weaknesses in people.
Okay. I like that outlook. It's very positive.
Because I think you can't sort of decide, like, what's good and what's bad in a person. Because everything is makes the whole.
I understand what she's saying, but that doesn't make sense. There are bad things and good things about people. Like laziness. That's a bad thing. Usually considered a bad thing. With Rey, I guess you can argue she's hot-headed. That could be considered a bad thing. She's stubborn. Angry. Even. I don't know. But again, they're not really weaknesses, because in the end, they don't really serve to hamper her. And that's the thing, she has no weaknesses, and because she has no weaknesses, we can't relate to her. Like Padme, even Anakin Skywalker, even though I won't call him relatable, but we can at least understand where it comes from. He had massive character flaws. Most of it due to George Lucas's poor writing. Obi-Wan even had his own flaws. Luke had his own flaws. Similarly enough, that hot-headedness, how he rushes in to save his friends and ends up getting his ass kicked by Vader when he wasn't ready. Not listening to the advice of his betters, to his senseis or masters, whatever you want to call them. Those are things that people can relate to, because we've all done things like that. But no, apparently we shouldn't have to have flaws, because it's apparently not a sign of good writing. But whatever. I mean, I guess you can argue she could become like a Superman character. But even Superman has flaws. One, he's weak against kryptonite. And two, he's too perfect. So you have to do things that kind of negate that, or make him have some kind of internal problems. So like, I remember reading about how he knows that he can save loads of people in the world, but he can't save everybody, even though he's this perfect being, at least on the Earth. And then there's also the case of when he goes rogue, that because he's so perfect, that makes him dangerous. And that's why the infamous games are so popular, and the comic as well. You can do things with those types of characters, but even then, they tend to have flaws to some degree. Like maybe you can be too good, and maybe that can blind you to some extent, but no, not Rey apparently.
And the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, as we know.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but we're talking about characters in a film, and they do need something that makes them human. There's nothing in Rey that really makes her human, aside from you're playing her.
Yeah, and I think those things, I for sure think people can work on themselves, like with things like anger and jealousy.
Right.
Maybe things like that.
I don't remember being jealous. Angry, yeah, but again, they're not flaws that actually serve a plot purpose, nor do they hamper her in any way. That's the thing. They're barely flaws. It's almost as if, oh, she gets angry a few times, but don't worry, she's just so good that she rises above it all the time. That's the thing. Her anger, these things that could be perceived as weaknesses, aren't really weaknesses because they don't impact her in any way.
But that's workable. That's not something that's fixed, that can't be changed. You can, like, work on that.
Okay.
And I don't think she's those things.
Okay, fair enough.
Enough said, guys. Enough said. Let's have a look at the chat. Let's have a look at you guys before I move on. Now, to start from the beginning, guys, Let's have a look. Sorry, Goyen, can't let anybody on. This is just a solo stream at the moment. Stanley. Pretty sure he's just a normal American. Oh, I'm not Jewish. Kick Mitch. God damn it, Free Press. I'm not V. I'm not cool enough to have that kind of meme put upon me. Hi, Master Stew. Honestly, I think Star Wars died as soon as Disney bought it. Really, I think it was the people that they brought on to write it. I mean, yeah, they had Lawrence Kasdan, but in the end, even he couldn't save this sinking ship. So I guess you're kind of right. Paul Feig said basically the same shit. Yeah, he did. But unfortunately for him, he had Sony backing him and some really, 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 really bad producers and actors and writers. So in the end, they didn't save him from the backlash. That was poor writing, but they only allow people to criticise based on sex on their forums. Probably. But yeah, the pointless mission on the ship, yeah. I know, Facts and Harmonia makes a good point. What the fuck is a person without flaws? True, but we're talking about characters, I guess, so I don't know. In theory, it could work, but it never does. Weakness in that a lack of power or longing to attain something. Something you lack and seek from Free Press. That makes sense. Personality traits that are good in one situation are bad in other situations. Yeah, that's the thing. That's something they could have done, but they didn't. Because when they wrote Rey, they weren't thinking of, this is going to be a great character for the Star Wars canon. They were thinking of, this is what we need for representation. Because, as we know with Hollywood, if any of you watch, Red Letter Media, they often talk about these films made by committee. Star Wars is basically made by committee at this point. So they have a checklist of things that they need to do. They need to put in, and Rey is the perfect, amazing female character, or one of many. So they have to do this. If they don't write her in that way, they're going to be accused of being sexist because she has a flaw. I mean, look at what happened in Game of Thrones. Like, you know, somebody gets put into a weak position. I think it was a rape scene, wasn't it? And people went livid because they can't stand the idea of a woman being in a position where she's not strong, even though this happens to everybody. But they don't care when, you know, Theon Greyjoy gets his dick cut off or things like that. No, they don't care about that. Well, you know, they're actors, Mike Kleiss. It takes a special kind of person to really, you know, come up with something meaningful when they're in that kind of profession. I mean, also, don't forget, you know, she's not very old either, so she's not lived a long time to really come up with stuff that's meaningful. So there's that, you know, give us some credit, you know. Mitch, will you be the Rey to Andy Kyle? No. No, I'm a guy. I can't do that. Hand gesturing is triggering me. I didn't notice that, to be fair. Yeah. He does write women amazingly well. GR does actually do very well. Yeah. To be fair, there really is no good guy or bad guy in Game of Thrones, technically. Although there are people who are better persons than others, potentially. Like, Jon Snow is probably a better person than, say, you know, the other Greyjoy, who's a pirate. Well, they're all pirates, but the one who's in league with the royals in Westeros, basically. You know, he's obviously a better person than Cersei or something like that. But again, you know, you can also understand why Cersei would do the things that she does, or why Jaime would do the things he needed to do earlier on before he became redeemed. But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on, guys. Oh, I don't know what to pick for this one. Again, there's a few that I'm saving. Let's go with Bergdorf, guys. Also, check how long I've been going. 30 minutes. Right, I'll spend 15 minutes on this next one. So, the Labour Party. I really need to make a massive video on these people. I need to make a video on it because they're a shadow of the former selves, and I've got a really good, like, little kind of thing that I need to record for that as well, using a song that's from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Some of you will know what I'm referring to, but that's spoilers for that video whenever I get a chance to make it. But they keep they keep digging their hole. They keep making themselves less electable. Oh my god, this is annoying as somebody who used to vote for them. I mean, the first time I voted for them because I didn't want the Tories in, because lo and behold, shit like this happens. But then again, I was also short-sighted and didn't realise that we'd have communists in the party, although we kind of had, you know, neoliberals becoming Marxists. I mean, the SJWisation was taking a hold during Gordon Brown's leadership, and it really began to take on steam when Ed Miliband was leader. It should have been David. If David was the leader, he would have won. Even though it might have been the same Blairite crap. Who knows? Maybe we would have staved off the communists. I'm not sure. But then again, this is Britain we're talking about. And they were going to put in Islamophobia laws as well, weren't they? So, yeah. But anyway, let's take a look at this. So, Monroe Bergdorf has been employed by Labour as a spokesperson. A transgender model who was sacked by L'Oreal over a race row has been enlisted as an advisor to the Labour Party. Monroe Bergdorf, 29, was dropped by the cosmetic giant after she branded all white people racist. Now, not just any old kind of racist, but biologically racist. So every single one of you white people out there, you're racist because you were born that way. Even though she's part white, and that kind of makes her racist, that kind of makes me racist, but whatever, you know. It's okay when you've got that drop of non-white blood, then you're not racist, right? And she sparked fresh controversy in December when she repeatedly used the N-word during an appearance on Good Morning Britain in December. I don't remember seeing that, actually. But there was the other thing. There was the This Week thing when, like I mentioned before, she basically shot on white people. That was one of the most racist things I've ever seen. And that was like a whole month where the BBC was pumping that shit out, with black nationalists getting platforms to shit all over the British public. Honestly, I'm waiting for the time when they get a black nationalist on who then attacks black people who are in interracial relationships and like white people and who don't do black things. I'm waiting for that. That's going to happen. You're going to start seeing purity spiralling eventually. I've got to move on, guys. But it has emerged that she has got a new role advising Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party on LGBT issues. The role will see her work with Labour's Shadow Secretary of State, Dawn Butler, on equality issues. This is why we need to get rid of these fucking equality ministers, because they don't do anything. Problems with equality has not been achieved, or addressed, shall I say. They've not fixed inequalities. In fact, it seems things just get worse. Now, there's also another thing I need to talk about later on in another video, about how we've gotten to the point where racism and offence has become a subject. Well, it always has been a subjective thing, but the law itself has become subjective, and that was to do with a thing that happened in the 90s, but which has influenced things like this. But I don't want to sidetrack and get too autistic, guys. So here she is tweeting about it. Thrilled to announce that I've been asked to be a part of an LGBT plus advisory board to the Labour Party to advise Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equality's Dawn Butler. Blah, 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 blah. See, that's the thing. Only in the West can somebody who is an admitted and proven racist, but because they're not white, can end up getting high positions, even after they've been sacked from, a very prestigious role, i.e. being the face of a very well-known and very successful cosmetic brand. But whatever, if she was white, I don't think she would get anywhere near this level of success by being racist. Even if she was trans, I just don't think they could go that far. I don't know. If they did, then that would be, they're opening themselves up to hypocrisy anyway, but that would be really opening the door. Let's have a look. Okay, here we are. So she announced the news yesterday on Twitter alongside a picture of her with the Labour leader. She tweeted, "Thrilled to be announced, blah, 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 blah." We've seen that. Spokeswoman for Dawn Butler. Hey, that's really sexist, Daily Mail. So Dawn is proud to stand with those challenging discrimination. Yes, challenging discrimination by encouraging discrimination, encouraging racism against a group of people who are the majority of this country and the majority of my family. And her family. Yeah. Dawn will consult with the LGBT plus advisory group on a wide range of LGBT plus issues. The 29-year-old British star appeared in the recent #AllWorthIt campaign with Cheryl Cole and Katie Piper. Now, I don't know what that was. I assume it was just somebody girl thing. Who cares? But she hit the headlines when she was dropped from a lucrative new role. Of course, it was the thing that she was representing L'Oreal for. When she branded all white people racist. Yeah, she did, even their own family. Tory party Vice Chair Helen Grant has written to Miss Butler, urging her to revisit the appointment. There really is no excuse for these abhorrent slurs, and fundamentally they damage the campaign to promote equality and diversity across public life, she wrote. When Jeremy Corbyn was elected Labour leader, he promised a kind of politics. Yet it seems every day we see some new example of abuse from the Labour Party. Yeah, see, it's a kind of politics for a certain group of people, but not for those people. You know, the white people. Not kind to them. Not kind to the white working class, even though he's meant to be representing those people. No. I mean, the Tories aren't actually nice to them either, but whatever. The kind of language Bergdorf has used has no place in public life and ought to be condemned by all those who are serious about promoting equality. Yeah, but you see, this is how you promote equality in the modern era, my dear. You've got to be racist to another group of people in order to defeat it. Don't you see? Two wrongs make a right. James Cleverly, vice chairman of the Tory, got so many mistakes. I hate modern journalism. Said Munro has said deeply unpalatable things about white people, gay Tories, and even the right to vote. Yet Labour has now appointed her as an equalities advisor. That's the thing, isn't it? They won't have gay people who are even on the left but don't agree with what Corbyn agrees with. They won't have them on to be advisors. No, they want somebody who's a social justice warrior. And if it has to be Munro Bergdorf, it's got to be her. Remember, this is nothing more than just ideological bullshit. This is him strengthening the echo chamber. That's really all it is. Many people in the Labour Party will have serious concerns about this appointment. Well, no, they won't. I mean, maybe a few will, but most of them won't. They won't care. That's how far it's fallen, because he's basically replaced everybody with his own people. And if he hasn't replaced them, they've simply adopted what he thinks. The chief whip will have whipped everybody into towing the party line. Miss Bergdorf, who was born a boy called Ian, oh God, Ian, works as a DJ and trans activist as well as modelling. She'll be able to live. I don't care about that. In a lengthy Facebook rant earlier this year, she wrote, "Honestly, I don't have energy to talk about the racial violence of white people anymore. Yes, all white people. You don't have the energy, yet you constantly do it." And you made a This Week episode about it. Because of most of y'all don't even realise or refuse to acknowledge that your existence, privilege and success as a race is built on the backs, blood and death of people of colour. And if it weren't for these white people, you wouldn't be around because you're mixed race. And you wouldn't have what you have. And to be honest, most of it was achieved in this country without slavery, actually. We were the ones who, outlawed it. I don't know if you remember this. Your entire existence is drenched in racism, from microaggressions to terrorism. You guys built the blueprint for this shit. I mean, this shit is what the alt-right would say, or at least the more extreme members of them would say it. This is what Farrakhan says on a daily basis. Like, I'm not trying to go all horseshoe on you guys, but she really does not see that she talks exactly like the white nationalists. Come see me when you realise that racism isn't learned, it's inherited, and consciously or unconsciously passed down through privilege. So that means she's on JF in that it's nature, not nurture. Race realism, guys. But left wing. Once white people begin to admit their race is the most violent and oppressive force of nature on earth, then we can talk. Until then, stay acting shocked about how the world continues to stay what? Fucked. I think that is, at the hands of your ancestors, and your heads that remain buried in the sand with hands over your ears. Enoch Powell couldn't say shit like this. She also branded the suffragettes white supremacists in a tweet posted earlier this month after the centenary celebrations of women's right to vote. Well, at least she's woke on the suffragettes. I mean, some of them were actually racist, especially in America. But I'm not sure about Britain. I don't think the Pankhursts really talked about race that much. I mean, maybe they did, but I've not seen it. But she's woke on them. She didn't quite call them terrorists, but oh well. She wrote, FYI, the suffragettes were white supremacists who were fighting for white women's rights. They specifically left black women out of the movement. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe in America, but in Britain, there wasn't a racial component to voting. So if you're a black British woman, who were a thing in the 1910s and the 1920s and 30s and whatever, a very small minority, mind you, they could vote if they were at first 28 and then later on 18, because they were British. They could vote. So yeah, there wasn't a racial component. They just, from what I've seen, didn't really think about it. But sorry, you know, that they weren't intersectional enough for you, because intersectionalism wasn't a thing back then, Bergdorf. She has also attacked homosexual conservatives writing online, gay male Tories are a special kind of dickhead. It's actually quite astonishing. Well, so are you, but you don't see me going on about that all the time. I mean, I kind of am in this video, but whatever. So, it doesn't end there, because Majid Nawaz steps in to lay down some heat on her, to throw some shade. And he says there'd be outrage if Labour's LGBT advisor was a Tory. He was referring to the case of transgender model Munro Bergdorf, who was appointed to advise Shadow Secretary of State, as we all know. And he said, he argued that the reaction would be very different if Munro had been a member of the Conservative Party. He said, if a Tory dissed feminist campaigners in this way, you would be outraged. But what, a black transgender model can get away with it because they're in Labour, which is mixed race. Watch his full take on the route in the video above. I mean, I could watch it, but we can basically see what he means there, and he's right. If she was right-wing, if she was a Tory, they would be attacking her for this. Now, to be fair, some left-wing black people have been criticised for speaking the truth on things in this country. And I forgot his name. I think it was Trevor Phillips. He used to be an inequalities type of minister, not proper government, but he made not a memo, but a sort of leaflet, like a pamphlet or some kind of study, not a book, but a PDF that I've read, and he talks about how basically our strategies in integrating people has failed, because it used to be that we'd do gradual integration, and it used to work for his parents' generation and my grandparents' generation and all these other all the old immigrants that arrived in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. But since then, it's pretty clear in the way that the world is moving on and the types of people that are coming in that we need a different change of plan. We need maybe a more, I guess the word would be aggressive, and he got criticised for that. So yeah, it's not necessarily even the politics, it's more about what you're saying and whose side you're on. It's the tribe, really. Anyway, let's see what you guys think. Hey Ben C, how you doing? Kick Mitch. It's not going to work, Free Press. You're not going to make that a thing. I'm not a V. I'm not memeable enough. Why does my profile pic look Filipino? It's actually, well, technically a Latina did do the, she did actually do that. It was a Latina who drew it, but it's meant to be kind of like Disney. She's influenced by Disney. Hypocrites, indeed. Drum. Hypocrite is what the new feminist political party... I guess. Hard to see a double standard when you stand in the boots of a bigot. Very true. We're not responsible for the actions of our ancestors. Insert confused Jackie Chan me. Is this from the cartoon? Anyway, how long have I been going? Like 44 minutes. I have one more article that I could do, or I could just forget it. I don't want to go for an hour though. Fuck it. We'll do Richard Spencer's Disastrous College Tour. I'm not. It's not really about him himself, but more about maybe this show something. So, as we know, Richard Spencer led hundreds of people into Charlottesville. Although I don't remember him leading it, and I don't think he was the one who was the only organizer. But it basically goes on as to how he started the Charlottesville thing, and then he went into hell, and then he's done a speaking tour. And basically what has happened here is that he's not drawing the numbers that he probably would have expected. Now, why is that? Well, personally, I think there's a few reasons. I think the number one reason is that there's simply not as many alt-right people as we are led to believe, or even that they believe. But they are in the movement, so they must know how many of them there are. There's at least a couple 100,000 of them. Now, that's a fairly big number. I mean, but it seems to me like it's not enough for Richard Spencer to go out there into these university colleges and things like that to do his speeches. Now, there's another reason for that. It could be that he's going to colleges. Most of the people there are not alt-right. In fact, a lot of them, probably the vast majority of them, or maybe a sizable minority of them, are far left, and the rest don't care, or are conservative or centrist, whatever you want to call them. So when he goes to these places, his audience aren't there. Either they're rightfully afraid of Antifa or other crazy people coming in to attack them, which is a fair thing to be afraid about. I mean, I wouldn't hold it against them. Or there's just so few of them at these universities that's the reason why he's not selling tickets. Not even his haters, not even people who are there to listen to him and disagree, are turning up. Now, another thing could be as well that he had his moment in the sun around about Charlottesville. That was when he was at his height, when the media was constantly using him and talking about him and painting him to be this boogeyman. But now he really doesn't have that anymore. They've stopped using him. They've grown tired of their plaything, and now he's going to the internet, which is why we've been seeing all these streams and debates that he's been in. But that's not worked out for him either, has it? Because, again, his speaking tour has not got as many people as he thought. His star has faded. But that doesn't mean that the movement itself is not growing. It is. It obviously is. But it's not growing to the extent that people think it is, especially on the left. They think that it's this rise of the alt-right, when it's not really a rise as such. A rise implies that there's some big, like, Overton window shift, when there really hasn't. I mean, right now, Generation Z, or the older members of their generation, is entering university. So my sister's generation, people my sister's age, sorry, I shall say, so 18, 19, maybe 20 at a push. And if they're not turning up, because they're supposed to be more conservative, more right-wing than my generation, apparently, why isn't he tapping into that? Why isn't he not getting all these people? It's interesting, isn't it? There's many different reasons. I don't think they're necessarily fizzling out, though. They're just not that big. They don't have the numbers. And that could be for a number of other reasons. It could be that they're not, promoting their message. They're not promoting their movement the way that they should be. When you have loads of people in the YouTube chat or in comment sections spurging out and typing 1488 and all the other stuff, and when you can't discern if they're being trolls or not, and then when they are saying legit racist things, they're saying legit racist things, normies are going to be turned off by that, because most normal people, whether you're white or black, you're not really racist. You're just normal. You have your friends, you have your family, you have certain principles, and your principles don't align with the far left or even the far right, and they get turned off by those things. So it's a case of communication. They're not advertising themselves very well. And also, again, they've got a backlash from other people as well. The far left hasn't done a huge backlash on them. They don't run the media. They don't have a lot of outlets that are supportive of them. In fact, the biggest one is, Stormfront. And as we've seen, it's run by cooks, and it's not very big itself. So there's that. And also, I don't mean to be a dickhead, but I have to say it, most of you you don't go out there. Some of you do, but most of you sit there on your computer screens all day and send super chats to people, and you moan about things online. You don't actually get out there and do the work. You don't go out there and spread your message. Now, part of that reason is, of course, some of you can't do that, at least in the way that you want to. Like in Germany, you probably couldn't say half, 3/4 of the shit that you say online. You can't do that, and that makes sense. Some places you are legitimately censored, but in the places where you aren't, like in America, and to a lesser extent here, although we don't really have free speech here, but we have enough that you could, in theory, have a protest. I mean, that happens. Britain first has protests. Legal ones. So it's not impossible, but you don't do enough in those places. In America especially, which is essentially your biggest audience, you're doing nothing. And that's, again, it's one of those many different reasons, and ultimately it's down to you to decide what reason that you think is the reason why his thing failed, and is the alt-right fizzling out. It's not fizzling out. It's definitely growing, but it's not growing very fast. And I don't think it was ever that big to begin with, so it's kind of a massive uphill battle that they're facing. But the SJW's had the same thing. They were the small minority that was growing and rising, who the Conservatives at the time were labelling the evil Marxist threat, and that we all ignored. And lo and behold, eventually they took power and became most of academia, most of entertainment, and things like that. So it's not impossible. That could happen, but it takes decades. It takes years. And the thing is, we live in a different time now where we have people who have the skills and the tools to actually combat things like that. So they might not win, but I'm not somebody who can read the future. So anyway, quick look at the chat before I go. Oh, super chat. My boy. I don't know if you're a boy or a girl, fact harmonia, but yeah. No, Ben, don't worry. I will not be like Jarbo. I'll only do it live if I can't be asked making a video about it. It's really just more like usual things, but condensed and more like a compilation. So whereas if I was to do a normal video, it would be one article. Really, this is more a collection, and this could be either live or it could be recorded, or I could talk about events that happen that don't really have an article, things like that. But it's not going to be like Jarbo. I'm not going to go fully live. Don't worry about that. But yeah, Free Press, you're right. They should do more public stuff. They should be allowed to do it. I mean, look what happened to Nick Griffin, as I keep saying. He ended up going on to the BBC, and now his political party is nothing. So, you're a boy. I got it. I got it. Anyway, yeah, that's everything that I wanted to say. I've been going a bit too long now. I see that we had some friends over. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you all for turning up. And I won't do this live next time unless I have to. So don't expect this to be a regular thing. So until next time, I will see you all in the next one. It's been your boy. See ya.